get ready for a
Oh, that's a great trick actually.
to build
the power pose.
Yeah.
The power pose. We're live on YouTube. We're power posing.
Nice.
I want you to join us for a guided meditation and a 3-minute power pose. That's what we do. This is how we're empowering the Magento community.
This is the new mental health component of the podcast.
This is
if you are not power posing for 3 minutes every day, you need to start today.
Yeah, you're missing out.
Your day.
Make today your day for power pose.
Start power posing. Why do you have that sweet light in the background and it's never on?
You want it on?
Yeah, it's like so sweet looking. Ooh, look at that.
It's a thing. It's very bright. That's why it's not on.
But is it meant to be a background light or is it?
It's meant. I'll ask my wife because she's the one who decorated my office. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. It looks like it's supposed to be a background light.
You know how we do. You know how we do. Joseph Leedy,
I literally
feeling empowered.
We do.
You feeling empowered in the chat, Joseph? He's feeling.
Calm the live chat stuff down.
What's up, man? We're warming up. Speaking of warming up, I have a cheese Danish pastry thing, a Cuban cheese pastry. Have you ever had one of these things?
Ooh, that looks delicious. Had a cheese Danish?
Yeah, empowerment and empanadas. That's our new podcast.
Wow, I can't believe they let you eat that. Your personal trainers on your triathlon training regimen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know me. Wow. Well, I'm biking to work, 25 miles round trip. So
I officially eat better than you do at this point.
I think I know that unequivocally that's true. You definitely.
I don't touch the pastries.
You don't touch them. You don't even look at them.
I don't even look at them.
You don't even look at them.
I do have Coke Zero though, so that might 0 calorie, but it might cancel out all of my credits to eating healthy.
Like I'm really into clean eating, except for all of that cancerous garbage I dump into my body.
I have like 3 large Coke Zeros every day.
3 large Coke Zeros. Show title.
Yeah. That could be a show.
What were you saying? You were saying before we went live, humming makes you sing better or makes your voice better?
It makes you talk better. If you it's like a speaking trick, that if you hum, that it puts your voice. You know how sometimes when you talk, it comes out nice and smooth.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, hey, how's it going, everybody? It just is kind of awkward. Like humming for some reason puts you into that ideal tonal range for some reason. So, go figure.
Do any of your kids walk around humming all the time?
They sing a fair bit. Yeah, they sing pretty much almost all the time. Sing and or hum. Juliet was humming for like 3 hours straight yesterday. So basically, yes.
Yeah, that's my my youngest Pierce. She does that. She just hums nonstop all day long. Just
yeah.
I'm like, what are you singing? She goes, "How great thou art." I'm like, it don't go like that.
That's adorable. It's adorable.
Yeah, she's amazing. Congratulations, Joseph's in the chat. He says he's now a certified associate dev. He's got his M2 certified associates.
Very nice.
That's not for it being sort of the foray or the entryway into the Magento 2 ecosystem of assessment tests or proficiency tests, certification quizzes, exams, if you will. Qualification.
What exactly you were talking about?
Qualification courses. It's not an easy test.
Yeah.
You know, we have a program. I think I've talked about this many times on the show, but we have a program that we've worked on for years now at Something Digital to take new hires and make them, take them from no knowledge of Magento and take them into a certified developer exam in a short period of time. So we were actually extending that down to what our Jumpstart program is, which is new hires out of college. So people who are straight out of college into the workforce, never have had a professional job before. So we have a mentor-mentee program, and it's my first year being a mentor, and my mentee.
Wait a second. Why is it your first year being a mentor? That makes no sense.
So yeah, so part of the thing is that all of our new hires, so we don't hire remote for first job out of college sort of positions. Those junior roles really require the in office experience.
Okay. So they're all in New York.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. Right. The idea is that they would grow here into our West Palm office once we have a critical mass of the tech lead role, but we don't have a lot of our tech leads are actually remote these days, which makes that even more difficult. So just, it doesn't mean that they have to be someone in your job role to be a mentor, but it helps to have that person in person. But totally. I expressed that I wanted to do a mentorship, regardless. If it was someone here, that's great. If it's someone in New York and we do it remote, that's great too. But I'd love to exercise that muscle. And so this is our first year of trying that, my first year of trying it. And it's working out really, really well. He's 8 weeks on the job, I think now, and he just took his certified associate exam. And Bradley, unfortunately, he failed, as he probably should, with 8 weeks of. I would be concerned if he had passed the exam.
If he passed it, it'd be like, hey, so
hey guys, this test that we like to say that we helped create, it's a little too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to do this thing again. I don't know what this is. I'm going to ask TJ why this thing goes out of focus.
Have you guys considered, have you guys considered talking about how you structure that program at like a conference talk or writing anything about? I think everybody has some, it's kind of like accelerators. Like every agency has some version of that, but I think some are probably more well-developed than others. And I think that people in the community could learn a lot from others that maybe their program is a little more well-developed.
I'm not making any promises whatsoever, but we have had conversations in the past about just kind of open sourcing this whole project. And I'm fascinated with, a good portion of this is not really like from a mentorship perspective. It's really just processes. Like they journal every day. We want to know, so
power poses.
Power pose. They do 3-minute power poses,
meditating
before they come to work. They're just coming up. They're like, yeah,
do like a Magento logo power pose.
Yeah, they're like this. They're like, so we have them. Yeah, we have them. We want sort of honest and critical feedback so that we can make the process better. I cannot deal with this thing being out of focus all the time. So we can make the whole, the whole program better over time, and them journaling their experience while it's happening rather than having a survey at the end over 8 weeks is proving to be very, very valuable. And you don't need to have a GitHub repo to tell people that maybe your new hires should just be giving you feedback every day on how they feel and how, what things are working for them and what isn't.
Is it getting old hearing every single day that he's unhappy with your mentorship?
Yeah. Gets a little old after a while, I can't imagine how he could possibly be happy with my mentorship. What did he expect after all? Let's share this stream out.
He must be thrilled.
Let's share this stream out while we chat. I'm going to put, I don't know if you know where it is, but I'm pasting the link into.
Oh yeah. No, that's awesome. Because I remember last couple of weeks, I was like going like, it would be good.
It would be, it's a good idea is if we tweet this.
Some tweets and stuff like that.
So there's a company that's done this before, and I was very impressed with them. I hope it's inconsequential. It has nothing to do with the fact that they gave away their entire business practices for free online. They're no longer in business, but it's a company called Hawraf, HAWRAF. They're a creative agency. And they basically, when they shut up shop, they data dumped everything in their Google Drive that wasn't client facing. They data dumped everything from like the way that they came up with their mission and vision statement to like their core values. And it's insane. And I've learned so much from seeing that sort of internal facing, you get this point in time snapshot of the things that worked and didn't work for a creative agency that was at the top of their game, and created one of the most pivotal, like a pivotal brand in my opinion, company called Entire World, which is doing really crazy things. But yeah, they just like straight up dumped everything that they had on their Google Drive public. Like it's a G drive that's just public. Anybody can go see it. And like, I feel like more companies, especially services organizations like a creative agency, could benefit from having a culture of openness, like extreme openness. We all would benefit from that. That's what open source is all about, right?
That's interesting. A couple of things on that topic. Well, I was thinking when you were talking about this, I was thinking of another company that did everything super open source, which was like a payments company. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it, but like they used GitHub publicly for everything that they did. It was like Balance or something like. I don't know if you remember this company, but I think they also went out of business, which was weird because I remember seeing them and going like, "Wow, they're doing really interesting stuff," and I thought doing really well. If somebody knows that name of that company, wants to pop in the comments. And then the other thing on that topic, I was watching some Gary Vee videos recently. I love how I can discuss Gary Vee at any point now. He's automatically relevant.
Yeah, it's relevant now because he was on stage at Imagine. Right.
But he was talking about how he gives out also as a digital agency, as VaynerMedia as a digital agency, they really gives out all of his, what he calls his best stuff, all of his specific tactics. He talks specifically about a tactic that they're using for running Instagram ads and for his own content and determining which thumbnail and title to use. And anyway, so his point was that he gives out all of his tactics, all of his best tactics and stuff like that. And that as a service, it's kind of open source in a way. I mean, it's not code, it's not on GitHub, but it's being extremely transparent about how you do, what your secret sauce is and all that kind of stuff. And so it's funny. So I'm watching this video and it was on AI. It was on the topic of AI and they were talking about, will AI eat up certain jobs and stuff like that?
Right.
And I'm watching it. I wasn't at all thinking about Imagine, and because I was watching tons of different videos that were completely unrelated. And all of a sudden, I see him with the Imagine badge on, and I was like, "Oh crap!" And then he goes on the stage, and then you ask him the question about AI, and it was this wild like collision of stuff.
That's crazy, right? And then that whole rest of his vlog was sort of about that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if he had that because I haven't seen that video in a couple hours. I watch it every few hours just to keep myself humble. No, actually, I haven't seen it since he actually published that one, but his answer on stage starts out in a very unsatisfactory way. He's like, I don't like to talk about things I don't know about.
Right. Yeah.
And then 20 minutes later, he's still talking about it, which I thought was interesting.
I remember not being particularly interested in it at the time, but then in the context of the video, and the title of the video was something along the lines of like AI is going to cut out, all of the below average people, average humans or something, which is a very provocative title. And
what was really interesting is I heard this. There's another podcast I listen to sometimes called Culturally Relevant, and it's hosted by a guy named David Chen who does a bunch of movie podcasts. He had said something really interesting about the sort of the prevalence of like this idea of he was actually talking about the Matrix because they're rebooting the Matrix. So like a
Really?
Matrix
They're doing
4
another
is
movie?
yeah, they're doing Matrix 4 with Keanu Reeves
Cool.
and Carrie-Anne Moss, which is going to be
That's
rad.
insane. That's
By the way, if you're getting your movie news from Magetalk, it's a really sad state of affairs.
probably need some help. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was talking about, the way that they do the AI sort of story in the world of the Matrix is the machines are like anthropomorphized. It's like, they have feelings and they learn to love over the trilogy. And like there's a virus and then they come to some sort of like a ceasefire because everybody has this like shared, like the Agent Smith virus is a threat to both humans and machines. So, they find some common ground. And I think that like, but that's not actually how AI would literally destroy the world. It's like the way it will destroy the world eventually is someone creates an AI to make paper clips, and then at all costs, with no other inputs or parameters and no understanding of humanity or morality, it proceeds to make paper clips ad infinitum until the whole world is destroyed. Like it co-ops nuclear power plants to power making more paper clips. And, humans are liquefied and used as power sources to make paper clips. That's how AI will eventually actually destroy the world.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on the topic. I think that I think Elon Musk's thing with this is brilliant. With the Neuralink, which is essentially his thing is, listen, we're not gonna stop AI from progressing, right? It's out of Pandora's box. There's too many countries, governments, powerful entities that have an interest in developing it. It's going to have, even if the United States said we're never going to do it, China, everybody else would.
Everybody else is going to do it anyway. It's the inevitable. Next nuclear.
Yeah, exactly. So then his thing as well. So the Neuralink is going to connect our brains right up to have extremely high bandwidth connection to computer interfaces, so that we can just hook our brains right up to all of these AIs, right? So that then we'll essentially be able to compete with them by hooking it right into our brains, which seems
right
like
now, if you think Magecart is bad having it on your website, wait till they're Magecarting you in your brain.
Yeah, segue of the year right there.
You like that?
Magecart off of your brain. If you've got Magecart on the brain, do we have a recommendation for you?
This is going to be amazing. It's like you have to open your wallet, but you're like, I can't really look because my eyes were Magecarded last week. It just happened. I can't have another ding on my social score, or else I won't be able to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got somebody in there. They're actually working on it right now. They're working on me, but they said they're not.
They put my brain in read-only mode. Who are you?
It's crazy, so man. It's nuts. But I mean, he has these solutions that, from first principles, they make so much sense. I mean, there's like, it makes all the sense in the world. But then you go, but that's impossible. How are you going to build a brain interface to the internet? And then he's like, well, here's how we'll do it. And before you know it, they have a demo. Before you know it, they're rolling them out. Before you know it, there's a friendly local Neuralink sales guy calling you on the phone.
I cannot wait. I can't wait till that's commoditized. At some point, everything starts this way, by the way. Everything starts with this incredibly complex, like, the Apple II computer is the thing that democratizes computers to be personal computers that can be in the home. And now, like, computers are in the cloud. It's like, eventually you'll have crappy $5 an hour outsourced, brain integrators that do really bad jobs, and people will be walking around glitching out like every now and then, because it's like,
be like, look at this guy. What did this guy use? A $10 integrator on Upwork to get his brain integration done?
He's up. This guy.
Look at this guy. Yeah, God, it's gonna
glitching.
It's going to be a
Yeah,
wild ride.
that's where that's where it's heading though.
Sometimes I think about my kids and I'm like, we want to prepare them for the world and, all this kind of stuff, whatever. And then I'm like, man, we have no idea what kind of world they're going to live in when they're 20, let
we have
alone
no idea.
40. Like, it's going to be, it's going to be a whole different thing. Speaking of which,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's it. No, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're going to be at, no, I saw this, I saw a tweet from my good friend, Tom Robert Shaw, who's going to be speaking at Meet Magento, New York, which is, September 5th and 6th. It's 5th and 6th, which is next week. And Tom always does a great job of giving talks. I think that'll be a good one. He's going to be speaking on Magecart, protecting your customers from Magecart attacks. So you are going to want to check that one out.
Do you think in that presentation somewhere is a bullet that says, here's a list of platforms that don't get Magecarded?
It's entirely possible.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I was asking a question about Tom's presentation. I just want everybody to be clear that I said nothing of the sort.
I'm going to read this note from the doc because it's hilarious, which says, PJ, hot take. Can't be Mage carded if you're not on Mage.
That is in the doc, actually. You're right. That's true. I have to keep doing this garbage because my thing isn't focusing on my face, which is probably a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
It's true though.
Agreed.
Isn't it true?
It is true. Yes, it is true. And
I have a theory that I was looking back through my old Google Docs. I'm like organizing stuff for the first time ever in Google Docs. There's thousands of docs.
Nice.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, you run across like a 19-year-old to-do list and you're like, oh, wow, I did a couple of those things.
Look at this budget that I was so optimistic I would keep up.
Yeah. You find your spreadsheet organizing your wedding.
29-year-old Philip thinks he's only going to spend $300 a year on Starbucks. That's so cute.
That's adorable. That's adorable.
So adorable. What a little cute little guy. So I had this thought 5 or 6 years ago, which actually is the thing that started Future Commerce, where I started giving this talk called "The Shopping Cart is Dead," which you might have heard me rant about at some point. It's funny because it actually, I believe the shopping cart is dead, but not in the way that we think of it. The shopping cart as a platform, I think, is dead. Having extensible software that can manage catalog and payments and logistics and inventory is not dead. But a shopping cart, like what we think of as a shopping cart, is effectively like a commoditized SaaS cloud piece of software that anybody can just go click 2 buttons and get. And so in essence, shopping cart software is dead. Now the stuff that we do now is actually work on platforms, and platforms like Magento allow you to build things that are really, really compelling and have a lot of possibility to be disruptive in the world. One thing I just put a video on LinkedIn about, sorry, I'm taking a big segue here.
Please, by all means.
A lot of the venture money that you see right now in retail are in marketplaces. So you see Forerunner has money in stadium goods, right? And you see GGV has money in ThreadUp or Poshmark or something like that. And these are all like resale marketplaces for luxury goods. And those things could never be built on a Shopify, right? They are built on platforms like Magento, or they are custom code.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what we have in our ecosystem now is an incredible opportunity for us to be able to leverage the power of an open platform to build products that would be disruptive in nature, that have retail they have retail components, but you're not necessarily using whatever it is out of the box to just slap up a store, right? Which is what I think people equate a shopping cart to. So even our, like yours and my definition of what Magento does has to evolve to what the broader like need in the ecosystem is, which is flexible software that can do all of the things that we need, like catalog, inventory, logistics, and checkout and payments, right?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because just today I was reviewing new jobs that were created on Commerce Hero, and one of them was a marketplaces site. So, yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, the use cases for Magento have been and are continuing to change, right? Like we were talking about how for a simple direct to consumer site, you're not using Magento right now, most likely. And but it's these use cases, marketplaces, things that have more custom requirements, things that wouldn't make sense to do on SaaS. These are the use cases that are going to make a lot of sense. And marketplaces are powerful,
Yeah.
and there's a huge barrier to entry to get them up. But they're definitely powerful.
Well, and not for nothing, they have the ability to, they have the ability on their own to be disruptive because they can be incredibly focused on just selling one sort of category,
Mm-hmm.
where a retailer might be tempted to go very broad on category. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't just do bed sheets. I do bed sheets and housewares and decor, and I do flatware and dinnerware and glassware and rugs and floor covering. It's just like all of a sudden it's kind of spun out of control. And so a marketplace is like, you could have 5 billion tables, all sourced by different vendors. And it creates like this really interesting economic opportunity for other people to take part in retail and have like, and out of that might come community and some other, like, those are the things that I think venture money is seeing a lot of promise in, and that's where they're making investments. Let me make two other little side journeys here. One is there's also a downside here because marketplaces are complex and Magento itself doesn't necessarily just do that out of the box. And so you need really, really, really talented people to be able to pull it off. And even then, you're probably not hosting it in Magento Cloud, right? So it's probably back to on-prem in some way.
Why are you not hosting it on Magento Cloud?
Because Magento Cloud, so this might be a little controversial depending on who you talk to, Magento sales, who I love, and I have a great relationship with a lot of folks in that channel, but you cannot co-locate software next to your Magento infrastructure at Magento Cloud. So the only thing that can be hosted in the Magento is the Magento software. And part of what might make you different in building a marketplace might be that you need to put that software physically next to something else.
Yeah.
And whether it's a content management platform, like there's ways to get around it, but it might not be worth it at the end of the day to invest in that. So let's say you go on-prem. Now you have all of these, you do have these challenges of Magecart, and you look at companies that have done this, that have tremendous amounts of money in it, like StockX, okay? StockX just got hacked, 6 million customer records exposed. They're not on Magento, but they're on a custom platform. StockX had $150 million invested into it. And if they can't keep customer data safe,
holy poop,
then what hope do the rest of us have, right? And so it's not even about the, like, people are so motivated now, and it's so hard to keep yourself protected. Once you gain critical mass in an audience, like, you have a bullseye painted on you. Mm-hmm. And I think that even if you have tremendous amounts of money, you can still fall down and let your customers down, and StockX will pay the price. And that's a scary thing. And then the other side of that is Magento just was rated, or Adobe, parenthesis, Magento, was just rated as a top tier platform in the new Gartner Magic Quadrant, right? So that was that came out yesterday, and there was this fascinating article, which Jordan, you'll need to link up in the show notes. Fascinating article from the Commerce Tools CPO, Chief Product Officer, on LinkedIn. And he was talking about how they invented headless, right? And
That LinkedIn did.
no, sorry, how Commerce Tools invented headless e-commerce.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That they were API first, they were e-commerce first, and that this Magic Quadrant, this 13 platforms that were rated in the Gartner Magic Quadrant just now, last week, was the first Magic Quadrant that used API as part of the qualifiers for a top tier platform. And
Gotcha.
it allows new contenders like Commerce Tools to rise above others, like the IBMs of the world that have fallen off. Kibo fell off. A number of different platforms that you might recognize their names have fallen off the list now. And they fell off the list because the game is changing. And I think that if you take, at least now, Commerce Tools is going to tell you that they do it best because they're the ones talking. And also they have this grid of the of what Magento is good for and like what all the platforms are good for, and they say SMB, and I'm like, you're out of your mind.
The famous comparison grid.
Yeah,
it's not
embarrassing. But long story short, like the Magic Quadrant is just one way of measuring aptitude, and Commerce Tools, is able to place on that report for the first time due to a change in the qualifications of what makes a successful e-commerce platform.
Mm-hmm.
Take that out 5-10 years, and like Magento has to get a boogie on. PWA has to finish. Like we have to have a fully featured PWA set of APIs. We have to have a fully featured, like it needs to be fully realized for Magento to stay competitive, or else they're not going to be on that list in 5 years.
Or you go the other direction, which is instead of them worrying about the PWA front end side of it, they double down on just the API coverage, which I imagine is what Commerce Tools is.
Correct.
They have the
Right.
API, right? And let the front end community worry about its front end stack. Get that get a boogie on that API coverage. That'd be the other tack to take there. And I know it's
how long have we've been talking about API only e-commerce for so long. I'm pretty sure that 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking about this when we first started the show.
Nah, maybe not when we first started. Maybe a couple weeks in.
Couple weeks in. I forget some of the ones that were really popular at the time. If you're in the chat, pop it in there. There were some. I know Lizards and Pumpkins was trying to do something similar by utilizing Magento's APIs to drive a separate experience that wasn't like rendered by Magento. I sort of feel bad in retrospect, like looking back at those folks are definitely trend spotters and people who understood where the ecosystem was going. They just were there so early, right? Like, who's the guy that's really into Bitcoin now? That's part of the PHP community. Luke something or other.
Not sure.
Yeah, he had a company that was like API only e-commerce that was like SaaS driven ages ago. It's anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's no, I mean it's true. It's something that is being. I was just looking through the Magento New York agenda, and there's a lot of discussion around things related to headless. There's going to be a talk on integrating with the different product offerings, Amazon Sales Channel, Google Shopping, has all that kind of stuff. I think there's, what was interesting here? We talked a little bit about artificial intelligence earlier, but they're going to have a talk on, Adobe Sensei, and which is Adobe's AI product. And they're going to talk about, how that integrates on a business level. We should get somebody from that product on the show, because that's super interesting. That's super interesting topic. We're planning to get actually John Baxendale. We're just working out some details on the show to talk about order management. Obviously, also very relevant to this discussion. But yeah, I mean, it's true, man. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and making progress.
Joseph, thank you. Joseph is like the man right now in the chat. Thank you. Oh, Jamie Huskisson's also there. Hey, what's up, Jamie? Joe had said Luke Stokes was the name I was looking for from Foxy. Foxy.io.
I think at this point, Joseph just got promoted to our honorary assistant producer at this point. I mean,
done.
More than
it's done.
Just a
I need to hold on. I'm going to get something to W with Joe. 1 second.
Joe is now an assistant producer on the show. So
I'm going to W with the with this Magento neon here. I now W assistant producer of the show and all of the rights and privileges thereof, at least until the end of this hour.
Yeah, no. So, anyways, I'm just browsing through the topics for Meet Magento.
Very compelling. Very compelling.
There's some cool topics, actually.
Is there a coupon code or some sort of a discount that we can give out for Meet Magento New York?
Unfortunately, we are not. We have not received any coupon codes this year. So, it's a sad day in Magetalk's history that we no longer have coupon codes.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Can we pull something in from the rumor mill and then we'll get to actual content?
Oh yeah.
You'll have heard it here first. For all three people that are watching live, I'm hearing via the grapevine from sources who wish not to be named about a restructure of Magento and Marketo within Adobe. So, I'm not sure if there will be some sort of a press release or if this is just something that we'll find out at like MLEU. But it looks like the former Marketo CMO, Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who will now head up the marketing efforts behind Magento as a product. And she is super interesting. We'll go into that in a second. But Magento is actually further separating its commercial sales practice from its enterprise sales practice. So it looks like Magento Enterprise, like what they consider to be enterprise, which I think is very broad. I think it's like $1 billion revenue and up, is being further absorbed by Adobe. And Gary Spector, who we all saw at Imagine, is going to take over the commercial sales for both Magento and Marketo. So all of that mid-market, enterprise sales.
Mid-market.
Yum.
It's just the chime.
Yeah, I like that. So someone that we'll probably be seeing a lot more of in this ecosystem is the former CMO of Marketo, Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who I met in passing about a year ago. And if you're not connected with her on LinkedIn or elsewhere on the internet, you should probably be. Very, very.
I have a pending connection request.
So do I.
There's that.
If you're not connected, you're in good company because neither are Kaylin or I.
Yeah. So that's really neat. So Magento and Marketo sales teams are being rolled up under Gary Spector. So,
yep. Okay. Which I think is an interesting development. And I think it tracks along with what we were talking about last week or 2 weeks ago with Magento being given more latitude or given more responsibility amongst its peers in the Adobe ecosystem, because Magento must be doing something right from a sales volume perspective to take ownership of sales of another product in the ecosystem, right?
Right. Because it wasn't like so could have been flipped. Could have been somebody from the Marketo community could have been taken over.
Totally. And what's really interesting about this is that Marketo was acquired for multiples more than Magento.
Okay.
Right. Marketo went for $4 billion or above, where Magento was acquired for 1.68. And I'm very interested to see. like it makes me wonder what the impact of things like Magecart and negative press around Magento might have had on the valuation of Magento in Adobe's ecosystem. Because if Magento's differentiators are things like Adobe open source rolling up under Magento and Marketo sales rolling up under Magento, why would you give that to a, fundamentally less valuable part of the asset, like acquisition of 2018?
Right. That makes sense. No, I mean, it must have had a massive impact. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, because those are some extremely high profile breaches.
Yeah.
And to those of us inside the community that kind of understand, especially particularly inside the developer community, that kind of understand some of the ins and outs, and we go, yeah, well, we sort of understand. Maybe they were on bad hosting, yada yada yada. But to the outside observer and to the market, those must have been pretty devastating.
Yeah.
To the valuation.
Speaking of bad hosting, if you're looking for bad hosting, look no further than anyone but Mage Mojo.
Ooh, you turned that one around nicely.
You like how I did that?
I was like, wow, where's that?
Mage Mojo has a product called Mojo Stratus, which is entering into V3 and apparently is 3 versions better than its predecessors, at least. But it is Magento cloud hosting evolved for Magento 1 and 2 for commerce and for open source. And they have a 15-minute SLA. And I was just talking to somebody today who is a member of the local Magento community, the broader community, but not necessarily a community, a longtime community member. They're just coming into this whole world of Magento. They've been on Mage Mojo for all of 6 months. They only know Mage Mojo or Mojo Stratus as the cloud product. Very happy with it. And they could not believe, they're flabbergasted, dumbfounded even, that the 15-minute SLA is an actual real thing. And they love them some Mojo. So if you want some Mojo too, go to magemojo.com/magetalk.
Actually on the topic of hosting, this is interesting because I put out some tweets asking people about, where they do their hosting, and
I believe if it's in the past, it's not a tweet, it's a twat.
Ooh,
the past tense.
I stand corrected. I twath.
That was for Jamie.
So yeah, okay. But yeah, so man, people, I got a lot of responses on those tweets, man. People
on hosting options,
yes,
modern hosting options for Magento.
Yes, got a lot of responses. A lot of people have very strong opinions about their hosting. And let me ask you this. This is the question of the day, okay? Because there's a number of Magento specialized hosts like Mage Mojo.
And others who shall not be named.
Others who shall not be named. And and then you've got a lot of people that host on AWS themselves. And when I say host themselves, what I mean is they're not going through some other management layer on top of AWS, which is essentially what Mojo Stratus is. They're doing it themselves, right? You could maybe
they're going in, they're setting up the VPCs.
Yeah.
And the EC2s, they're clicking the buttons.
They're clicking the buttons and dealing with anything that might come up with Aurora or, the database servers, whatever, any kind of wild stuff. So, and they're also dealing with support, right? So if whether as an agency or merchant side developer, tech manager, if you're sort of owning AWS and not going through another service provider, you're kind of having to deal with support. So we were going back and forth on, is it a good idea? Because I was honestly surprised by how many people said they host directly on AWS themselves. I tend to be more of the mindset of like go through a specialized host. And obviously we're a little biased because Mage Mojo is a sponsor, but I've always felt that way even beforehand. Like, and so when I was at Clean, we used Sanasi as a specialized host, the last merchant.
Right.
And so I've always been of that mindset. A lot of people are of that mindset, um, but what do you think? A lot of clients are like, "Hey, put us on. Let's go on AWS, right?" Like a lot of people feel very comfortable being on AWS because they know it's kind of the gold standard, and your mileage can vary on AWS, right? Like, are you in multiple region? Are you load balanced in multiple regions? Are you, like there's a bajillion ways to configure AWS. So,
And there's a jillion ways to configure it poorly.
Right. So like, do you think it's a good idea, like being objective about it? Do you think it's a good idea for people to be hosting on AWS themselves?
No, it's a terrible idea. It's a bad idea. That's
I
it.
thought you were going to give like a very nuanced non-answer, but you just nailed that. Because I would have thought you guys would have a good number of clients that were on AWS and things like that.
We have some that are on AWS, but we require, because think about the role of a systems integrator, right? Our role is to be specialist in making the platform, work for the end user and the customer. And along the way, there are certain things that are required, like you have to have an infrastructure to launch it into. But for us to do right by our customer, we would have to be experts in all things AWS and retain talent and have certifications and security personnel that are dedicated just to doing that. And that would take away, we would probably be an expensive resource for that. And it would take away from our ability to to hire and retain roles that we need to grow the other side of the business, which is actually like project execution. So while we have DevOps folks in-house, they're not AWS masters. They're generalists on us delivering. There's more internal facing. It's like us delivering solutions for our clients. And that's just purely from my experience at Something Digital. I'm sure someone else at Something Digital might have more to say about that. So any AWS work that we do, we will inform, but we always use a managed layer service provider, like a Rackspace that can do AWS managed services, so that they can set up and deploy the DevOps layers for us to do Terraform or whatever it is. For us to, if we're doing containers, they set those things up and they maintain them. They make sure that the auto scaling is set appropriately. They are the ones who are managing the billing. Because by the way, that's the other thing about AWS is you kind of have to be an expert at setting up and gaming.
You got to have a billing guy.
You got to have a billing guy.
Have an AWS billing guy.
And who wants to? I don't know. Like, if that's all you do, then you're a SaaS company, and your volume of customers is growing, and you need to sort of contain your costs in hosting, then you should have somebody that thinks about that intently. If you're a professional services agency like us, and that's not 100% of your focus, I think it's really hard to be, unless every single customer was required to be on an infrastructure that we manage and sort of control at AWS, it gets a little dicey.
That's interesting. So you guys hold a hard line that they have to go through a managed service, unless I'd imagine they have a big in-house. Excuse me, unless they have a big in-house infrastructure team or whatever, and they're fully comfortable with it.
Correct. And I know that might be like, for some might hear that and sort of scoff, or say that they have that's probably a hard requirement to level against a customer. But what we never want to do is I never want to pretend that I know everything about everything, and then something happen. To do right by our customers, we have to be 100% honest with them. It's like, while we can set things up and get things functional in AWS, it's hard for us to take responsibility for your billing, your costs, your security. There's just too many factors there, and we're not experts in that. That's just not what we are.
Yeah.
But by the way, Jamie Huskisson in the chat saying that Akuva featured heavily in your hosting thread.
Yeah. So Kuva got mentioned a couple of times. I believe they are also a cloud. Jamie will correct us, but I believe they're also
they're a Magento like cloud,
a management layer on top of AWS. I see they're in the AWS partner network. So yeah, they're another sort of cloud layer. And just briefly, I'll go through some of the others. Nexus actually got some good shout outs. And just to be objective here and unbiased, despite our wonderful sponsors, a lot of people mentioned AWS. Of course, Telesh had to come in and be funny and mention Azure. Although maybe he wasn't being funny. Maybe he really does.
Believe it or not, a good number of clients of ours are choosing Azure these days. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. Why are they choosing it?
Because a lot of the clients are skewing up market, and a lot of them have physical, like they have infrastructure already in some way or another at Azure. And so they're.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I also know that they give some pretty cool incentives. I remember at the last co-working space I was at, there was somebody gave a talk, and they do some, Azure was giving out some really cool incentives to like startups where they would.
Speaking of which, can I rep something that I'm very excited about?
Yeah, let me just finish just for completeness.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
So there's Sanasi. Actually, DigitalOcean got a couple of shout outs running Kubernetes.
You're a fan of DO.
Yes, and so that was cool that Dio got some love. How did
Heroku do on this list?
Heroku didn't. No mentions.
Joyent was on the list.
Yeah, Joyent was on the list. Hypernode, which is Byte out in Netherlands. Max Cluster is Simon Sprenkle out in Germany.
Never heard of that one.
Community member. Has a blog post where he just mentions his experience with all the hosts and those guys.
Oh, that's sick. Yeah.
Do a good job. Sanasi got a number of shout outs, WebScale, and I think that about covers it. So one person mentioned UK
I've got a friend of mine, Robert Rand, who is part of JetRails down here in the local Magento meetup, South Florida local Magento meetup community.
Right.
I'm not sure how JetRails did in the poll, but I'd like to, just as a matter of course, because he's an awesome guy, and I have a multi-year relationship with him, and he's been a big supporter of the podcast for a while, and a big supporter of the local meetup for a long while too.
Nice,
so JetRails should get some love.
Yeah, I chatted with him in New York. Actually, he was telling me about what they're doing, and that they're doing really well. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. So you can continue with.
Oh, there's no sorry. I was interrupting you.
There is no sorry, sir.
There's no crying in baseball.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So Future Commerce.
Do we have a hard stop, by the way, in 4 minutes?
Oh, I've got a soft stop.
Okay. All right.
Do you have a hard stop?
No. I just wanted to get to this graph. Remember the graph?
Oh yeah, we'll get to the graph. The graph.
Sweet.
Future Commerce. We've been thinking for a long time, especially as I've started to write incendiary blog posts about companies like Victoria's Secret who are polluting the earth and polluting our children's minds. That's a whole other story. But I'm very
interested.
As I write blog posts like that, I'm sort of challenged internally at Future Commerce as a startup, what we are going to do to affirm our commitment to sustainable business practices. So we had put out a press release last week that we have created our own sustainability initiative internally, but also holding our partners accountable for being sustainable businesses and having a corporate responsibility statement and working with them to hold them accountable, and they can hold us accountable as well. Part of that discussion around partnerships was we discovered that Google Cloud, which was not mentioned, I don't think, in your poll,
The only mention it got was Brent Peterson saying, "Why didn't anybody mention Google Cloud?" So,
Google Cloud Platform, interestingly enough, is ISO 5001 certified. It's the only cloud provider that's ISO 5001 certified for having running their data centers, and all of them, on 100% renewable energy.
Wild.
And so for that reason, we have committed to move all of our infrastructure, which is not much right now, but we're moving all of our infrastructure and choosing partners based on who is doing work at Google Cloud, because we believe in the work they're doing. So we're relocating a lot of our stuff over to platforms that utilize Google Cloud where appropriate, and when we can choose hosting or software that we locate in a hosting environment, such as the media platform we're building right now. It will be located at Google Cloud Platform. So
that's cool. That's cool. Hats off to you.
Okay, do this thing.
Now isn't Google also deleting the accounts of Chinese protesters and stuff like that? Are we gonna go down a rabbit hole? No, we're not gonna go.
Yeah, you know what?
That's cool. That's a good thing. That's great. You're a regular do-gooder. No, I was checking out some of the Hong Kong stuff. It's wild, man. Have you seen?
That is a whole other. That is wild.
That's a whole.
That stuff is wild.
Like there's like these gigantic poles with like video cameras that they use for face detection surveillance, and there's people like ripping them down. And
stuff. But they did you see that they've been putting the like laser pointers on pairs of glasses to like blow out the facial recognition software. It's crazy. Cool. It's crazy
that's
stuff.
Wild.
It's crazy town.
Crazy things happen in the world. So I just real quick got to touch on this graph that we talked about, but there was a post by WebSmith, I guess indirectly or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Who I just saw the tweet, somebody retweeted it, and it's America's second most prevalent form of wealth creation behind home ownership is starting a business. Note this decline in startups. And there's a graph which is essentially going down from 1979 to 2014, which is startups as share of all businesses. And it goes from like 14% down to 8%. So essentially it's saying that startups are in decline. And I don't believe that. I can't see how that is at all possible with, certainly I can see how, brick and mortar businesses,
retail, right.
Are in decline. Right.
Oh,
but like if somebody wanted to start a pizza shop or something like that, yeah, I could see how in 1979 that was maybe more popular than it is now. But these days, every single person on the internet has some sort of a side business, right? You've got 3. I've got myself, right? Every mom has like a couple of side hustles. They're selling stuff on Instagram. My wife's is starting a business. Like she's gonna be doing. So it's hard for me to imagine that startups are actually in decline. And I mean, in the Magento community, there's a ton of freelancers. We've talked about people that are going out on their own, starting new agencies as their freelance careers are picking up. You ever look at a graph and you're like, I'm not a scientist, but I don't believe this graph. So that was my impression. I mean, do you think it's at all possible that people starting new businesses is in decline?
If I had to just wonder aloud how you would wind up with a graph like that, it must take into account the fact that in 1979, when people needed a little extra money, they might start something on the side and sell a product or a service, or do some sort of like, I'm going to go mow people's lawns. I'm going to go sell, encyclopedias door to door. They might have had one avenue to start a business, where in 2019, they have to install an Uber app and they're in business. Like if that's not considered a startup, then I think then you will have this thing that looks like attrition. But entrepreneurship in the United States in 2019 can be assisted with on-demand workforce apps that people don't necessarily have to go out and register with the state for corporations and file taxes as a corporation. for them to be in business for themselves.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I almost wonder if this graph was only looking at like C corporations or some certain type of corporation. I could see that. But if you're looking at everybody that's self-employed, I mean, anybody that does Airbnb, that's a business income. Anybody that does, like you said, Uber, like they're not, that's all business income essentially. So I'd have to imagine this chart is going in the other direction, but who knows? I mean, how that data was actually sliced, but
Yeah, I think it does tell one person's particular, narrative of a story of, a means of wealth creation, because I think
yeah.
that was the premise of the tweet,
Yeah,
right?
the premise of the tweet was like, hey, America essentially, Americans' means of wealth creation is in decline. And it's definitely true that, there's a lot of segments of the American economy that, of course, are in decline and things like that. But it's just hard for me to imagine that it's the startup.
It's but
Um,
I mean, yes, yeah, I mean, it could be. Also, just because something is, I don't know what's the scale of that graph. That's the other question that I would ask.
yeah.
Is it in a like if that's hundredths of percentages, then the scale is terrible. Like,
Well, it's from 14% down to 8%, basically.
oh,
So
okay, well that's appreciable.
drop. Yeah. And also the startups as share of businesses is a strange framing because how exactly is a startup defined
I
versus
mean that okay. I
business?
mean
A startup is
that right
essentially.
there, you that right there would skew it, because as a percentage of business,
Yeah.
right? If you have, one outlier year where you have, lots and lots and lots and lots of startups, then every other year thereon would be skewed as a lower percentage of startups because they're considered pre-existing businesses, right?
Maybe. I mean, yeah, I never know what the definition of a startup is, right? Like you could have a business that's, in the internet years, a business that's like 5 years old is like is like an old timey business, like an established business, versus like if you're a year, 2 years old. But anyway, to bring it back to the Magento community, like we've talked about how we've seen our community grow up and mature, and a lot of us who started off, as employees and maybe are still employees, like we've started businesses. Like you've done that. Like I'm thinking about a lot of the people on this Twitter thread who have started different types of businesses. And think of Max Pronko, Telesh as a new product he's launching. I mean, almost everybody I can think of is starting something left and right. And so, I think that what we see in our community is a lot of people starting cool things and having success. So, yay, Magento community.
I'd like to see that on, against a chart of, against a chart of sort of market share of Magento versus other e-commerce platforms, because I think that there's while the Magento market share might be in decline, the the percentage of people that cite that they're happy with Magento is probably on the rise, because Magento isn't a good fit for everybody, and people being on Magento and being unhappy with it is actually really bad for the community, right? People being on Magento and being happy with it is what will help make us successful in the end. Because we don't need brand detractors. We need brand evangelists, right?
Do you think that we should broaden out? The Power Podcast is Magetalk, right? It's specific to Magento. Do you think at some point we should broaden out and not just be Magento specific? I mean, because the entire community, everybody's broadening to different platforms. I mean, that's a lot of what you're talking about lately.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I don't know. It's almost an outdated mindset to just be so platform specific.
I think Gary Vaynerchuk, as you open the show musing about Gary, I think let's close the show with talking about what if I may emulate him, I think Gary would say that that's the wrong direction. The right direction is more niche content and find a fanatical audience about a particular niche and just go hard in the niche. And you may not have broad appeal or even be able to have like, it's not mass market in any way whatsoever, but the people that do connect with you are infinitely more valuable to you because those are people that are more qualified to buy the enterprise software that, is sponsoring the show. There are people that are more likely to contact you when they need to look for a job. They're more likely to contact me when, they need an integrator. Like the ancillary value of being incredibly narrow on what we talk about is probably not, it doesn't lend itself to a broad audience, but the ones that do engage are highly valuable. But
yeah.
I'm just channeling Gary.
You're giving very definitive answers, man. I swear, back in the day, you would give like these very vague answers to everything and with like non-answers. And you just go hard in the paint now, man, on every single question. Beautiful.
Sorry. I'll learn my lesson one day to be
more.
more.
No, that's because now that you're a hardcore retail influencer, man, you just drop the gavel. You're like, I have my opinions. And I'm dropping.
You know me, I'm like, brah, brah, brah. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. That's all we got for you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to give us a 5-star review on every platform.
All of them. We'll read them live and we'll make fun of you at the same time when you do.
And we will see you next week. And now I'm going to wait in silence while Philip closes out the thing.
And